Hello and welcome everybody to the GameGuru Max live broadcast number 32. Yes, I know what number it is because I just checked 5 seconds ago. Now, if you remember last Wednesday's broadcast, I was talking for a fully 3 minutes and no one could hear me because my microphone was switched off. So the first thing I'm going to do in this broadcast to make sure everyone can hear me and that my microphone is definitely picking up my voice. And I said that very slowly last time because I got a little monitor which shows my microphone doing activity. And it looks like that's my voice that I'm seeing. So, the best way is to ask. So I'm asking, can you hear me? Am I coming through clearly? Great, yeah. Alan, Kevin, thanks very much. Everyone can hear me, great. So, as is the format, please ask your questions. If you have any burning questions that you need to ask me, I'll try to answer a few of them today, right now, and the rest of them I will answer in text form in a forum thread that will host this live broadcast as a recording on our YouTube channel. As is the habit, and you've probably picked up a theme since the start of January, the updates and the stuff that we're showing is a little slow in starting up, and the exciting new eye candies are a little thin on the ground. Obviously, this is because, well, maybe not obviously, but we're doing a lot of design and dev planning in the background. And so we're not going full steam ahead into just cracking on with code and art until we have a really good plan, a solid plan that will deliver a great product at the end of the process. And so, you know, once the dev plan is in place, then we can start ramping up and getting lots of people to do different things, and I've got more things to show. The good news is we're getting almost to the end of that. We've certainly done a lot of the design. In fact, say 98% of the design is now done, and we're almost at the end now of the dev planning. That's basically creating lots of lovely spreadsheets to show what's been done, when and by who. And so in March there won't be that much more working on the dev plan. It will be all hands to the grindstone, creating lots of cool and lovely things, and your weekly Wednesday broadcasts will be filled with lots of goodies, and your Friday builds will be filled with lots of things you can play with, hopefully in a good, stable state, so you're not really having the job of finding lots of bugs and reporting them, simply to play around with the things that we're happy with and hopefully get some good feedback from yourselves. So with that, I want to let you know one little piece of news. We have been brave and we've upgraded to the latest version of the Wicked engine. For those who don't know, rather than writing our own graphics engine from scratch, which, you know, we've been known to do over the last 2 decades, this time we opted and we sought a higher power, and the Wicked engine was a clear winner for us to choose. And we haven't really updated to the sort of the parent repo for quite some time. And I think it's well over 6 months, in fact. And so when we did, I'd say there's a lot of goodies. Yes, there's a lot of goodies, but also quite a lot of optimization on the graphics engine side, such that our code didn't really merge with the latest version. So we had to do a lot of work to get it back up and running. But when we did, and we ran it, we were pleasantly surprised. Now, I'm not going to show anything about those pleasant surprises today, because the way we do builds is a lot of the work has actually been done already, and on Thursday, which is the day before we release our Friday builds, as you might be able to work out, we kind of already done all the coding and the work. We're just testing it, making sure it's solid, so you can play a solid version tomorrow. But the next week's build will contain the new graphics, the new Wicked engine. And one of the things that I can tell you that it's fixed is bloom. So it's no longer a really crazy flickery bloom effect. It's really nice and subtle and wonderful now. And we're also working on some lighting stuff, and I'll tell you more about that next Wednesday. But for today, my main thing I want to show you isn't really in the software. It's a general announcement that for the last couple of weeks you've been watching us working on the installer. So if I just show you my screen, which comprises of, this is our internal build folder, so don't worry about that. Normally you would be in program files. But the installer and the auto updater, as far as we're concerned, is now done. Anything that was issues to do with the updater, we've now caught and fixed. Issues to do with the software not running after the update has done its thing, those issues are still floating around, and we're still looking at them, trying to get to the bottom of them, reproducing them, and hopefully fixing them as we go along. But in terms of what the installer does, the tiny installer, and the auto updater, both for the public builds, the ones you see, and also the internal builds, we've actually created a nice robust system. So as testers, we have some internal testers, we've also got the internal team. We get to see what you see on Fridays reproduced faithfully using the same system. So we can sort of test it as if it was the public build, but we protect you from that until we're happy that, you know, it does the job, and then we press another button and boom, you get the same one. So that's all the stuff that's going on in the background, and what it means is we have a pretty robust system to not keep giving you 5 gigabyte installers. We just give you a little news announcement which says a new version is available. We even present the button within the software to say press here to update, and bing bang bush, after a couple of executions, you've now on the latest build. If the build is just a few file changes, then that happens very quickly. So this is the last build. This Friday is the last one where we're going to really talk heavily about installers, our updaters. We're now going to start talking about UI and features and all the rest of it. And the reason I brought you into this folder is just to show you what the software is doing in the background a little bit. This one, this is run when you first run GameGuru Max, and it does a really quick check on the server to see if there's a new version available. And it comes back and says, yes, there's a new version, and then the software knows to offer you the option to run the auto updater. And this is a file which is called GameGuru Max Updater, which, as you might guess, is the auto updater. But what we do is when we put it onto our server, we do that. And the reason we do that is if the updater is running, the updater can't update itself. So what happens is when you actually go off and get a new version, it actually pulls down this file, GameGuru Max Updater, in brackets, new. So it can sit alongside the GameGuru Max Updater app. So what happens is, there's a new one. So it basically then says, okay, so I am going to run that one, which then means we can get rid of the original updater, and then it replaces it. So effectively now have a system for us to update the updater through the update process, which there's 4 or 5 different ways we could have done it, and that's the one we chose. It's certainly not the most elegant, but it's the one that we've tested. It works, it's great. And so if we do need to make fixes to the updater, that's how we're going to do it. So no stone has been unexplored. And the launcher, just for completeness, that's the one that will actually launch GameGuru Max in administrator privileges in case the main Mac software needs to do things like the aforementioned replacement of the GameGuru Max update file. So I've bored the smeg out of you with tech. Let me just run the internal version. Really just for completeness, this is what you're going to see tomorrow on Friday. And as you see, it's just going to mention a few things that we've got some tweaks. It's the final version of the updater. And we've also put back the ability to dock your windows. We felt that if users, new users, accidentally drag these tabs around, they can very quickly mess up their UI. And we had it inside settings general. So you could accidentally tick that box and then mess up your UI. So what we've decided to do is move it into developer. So now it's here, allow window undocking. So let's select that. Now I can actually pull this out of here. You see, I've just put it back. Even I can get it wrong. That is not what it should look like by default. I have to do that. And so that's sort of like secret knowledge, which is why it's under developer tools. So for those who got a bit worried last week that, hey, wait a minute, where's undocking gone? I can't do multi-monitor anymore. We've put it back. But the reason we put it under developer, and anything that we put in developer, consider it like an experimental mode. So anything you see here, don't criticize us too much. We are still working on it ourselves, even deciding whether it becomes a permanent feature of the product or whether we remove it for release. And of course, you know, if something's getting out of hand and it's going to take an extra 2 weeks to anticipate, it might be the case that it gets pushed to, say, a version 2 or an update after the version 1. So for those who are interested in docking and really missed it, we've put it back. It's now found in developer tools. But apart from that, you find a few bug fixes here and there, but this generally is the last time you'll hear me talk extensively about the auto updater. So now looking at my live chat, we are looking for The clock, we got 4 minutes. Great. I should be able to answer a few questions in 4 minutes. Let's see how close we can get to 15 minutes. Whether we include the intro or not remains to be seen. But I think we can get away with it. At least the questions I can see right now aren't too onerous. So everyone can hear me. That is great. Here's a question from DL Lee. What year will you release the official release? Approximately. Approximately 2021-ish. So that's my... You wanted approximate, so I've given you approximate qualifier. So Luke Coke for 2021. Looking for a question... with a question mark. I think we might get away with the entire chat without me having to answer any questions today. Hooray! Here's a question from Mickey Martin. Will you be able to make a road like you make you walking path? No, there's not going to be any road builders. What you will be able to do, and what you can do right now, is have a path texture and then set your brush size, and then you can paint a brush like so, and there's your road, and you can choose the texture that you want. So it could be tarmac, and then you could line the sides of that with maybe some pavements or some other street furniture. So in that sense you can create a road, but there isn't what I would call a road builder, which generates the geometry in order to create, you know, all of the curves and stuff that you might find in an urban setting. So no road builder, but you can certainly create roads using the paint texture technique. Here's another question. This is from Lustian Mapping. Will GameGuru Max have fire? Yes. I've got that down on my dev plan. I want fire. And as to how sophisticated that fire is, well, that remains to be seen. But you'll certainly be able to drop in a particle effect that has fire, and then drop that around your scene, and then your scene will have fire. Here's a question from Super Confidential Man. Will the graphics rival CryEngine? No. No. All you have to do is look at any CryEngine game and look at the credit list. And then come back to me and say, Lee, will you be able to do the same output as those 250 people on your own in a couple of months? Probably not. So that, I'm afraid, is the answer. We're not going to try and beat CryEngine. We're not going to try and beat Unity. And we're not going to try and beat Unreal. Their teams are huge. And until we, if I turn up a rock and find an extra 99 programmers and artists willing to help out, then yes, maybe we'll consider it. But that's not the case so far. Here's a question from J Birdmax. Will we be able to distract enemies by throwing a bottle or creating a distraction? Yes, indeed. In fact, I was talking about that earlier today, about some stealth features that we might be adding to the plan. It's not formalised, it's not finalised, but we did like the idea of that, so you get a bit more rich experience in your gameplay, because there will be times where in a shooter gameplay you would want to do that kind of thing, so you're not having to kill literally everyone in the level. So keep an eye out for more details on that as we start talking about what I'm calling the shooter gameplay. Here's a question from Martin Oliver. Will we have to download the Tiny Installer again, or official release, or are we good? Yeah, you don't have to. If you've got, say, the last Tiny Installer that we updated, that's it. You would have needed, if we didn't figure out a way to update the updater, you would have to keep doing the Tiny Installer download every time we change the updater. We've added a system, as I said, where you don't have to do that anymore. So any Tiny Installer that you get from, say, now, that's the only one you'll ever need. After that, you can rely on the auto updater to do its job. I wanted to keep it as simple as possible for you to get the latest builds and the least amount of download time as well. Oh right, yeah. So you want to beat CryEngine 3? Yeah, that's going back a bit, isn't it? So we'll see. We'll see. I doubt it though. I mean, we just can't compete against like a room, nay, a building full of artists and coders. It's just not practicable. Here's a question from Myron Chase. Have you made a decision on re-enabling rudimentary VR? Just if you were seen, maybe in developer options. The developer tools option, it could be on the cards, yes. Because as I said, we kind of remove our own responsibility if we put something in developer tools. So there's going to be a forum thread that's related to this broadcast. If I can get a few people to say, yes, put VR back into developer tools, I can take that to the team and suggest that's actually a good idea, because people will be testing VR sooner, and we do need that kind of feedback as soon as possible, even if we can't sign it off as complete. But you can certainly get to use your headsets again, which is always fun. Here's a question from SlimSquirrel62. Can I throw a few suggestions? The ability to select lights that cast shadows and the ones that do not. So basically a tick box to whether you cast a shadow from a light. And arrange for the lights to activate shadows, like in a room behind a door, for example. Yeah, if you actually look at the seller demo that's currently included in the build, some of the shadows only switch on at a certain distance, and you can sort of see the shadow switch on. It's like, no, we need that range to be longer so the shadow is there by the time you actually go and look at that particular object. Two really good suggestions, and yeah, those I think would be mandatory, so don't worry about that. And if you don't see them in when we start talking about lighting and objects and shadows, then yeah, throw something at Lee, and it needs to go in, because those are basically fundamental, I think, for light planning and obviously performance planning as well. So looking for another question. This is from Super Confidential Man. Can you still pause test game and edit like in Classic? No. New, again, getting rid of F9 mode. It was just a bit discontinuous. You could only do certain things in the editor. You could do certain other things in F9. They were two separate systems, so user had to learn two different editing methods. Yuck. So we got rid of F9 just for cleanliness. We do have a plan on how we put back not only the functionality that you had in F9, but really go to town on making that functionality complete. But I'm not going to reveal any more on that. That's further down the line, but I think you'll absolutely like it when we implement it, and you'll see why we did it that way. But I'm not going to say anything else, because that's something I want to keep that powder dry. It really is an exciting thing that we've been talking about. Here's a question. Will the lights be able to attach to entities like characters and particles? Entity attachments. No, I don't remember that in our dev plan. It's a great idea, being able to associate entities together. Like, I mean, there was actually in GameGuru Classic, no one knew about it, but you could actually lock. You basically link one entity to another, and that. Go and check out GameGuru Classic and use, I think it's something like Control L or Shift L, and you can basically link two entities together. So if I don't take that out, then yes, the answer is yes, you can connect a light and two entities together. But I think there'll be many cases where we would want that to be the case. Certainly when we do our visual logic system, maybe one of them is make this entity always follow that entity. So it's then more about a scripted and a behavior method rather than something built into the properties of an entity. So it might be that way we do it, rather than sort of hard code these modes into the entity properties, which I'm inclined not to do. So how much gonna cost GameGuru Max? $49.99. That is the price that we mentioned when we first talked about Max, and that price hasn't changed. And of course, if you want to pre-order and trust us to deliver a great product, then you get 25% off if you did it now. And expect that pre-order discount to continue for a while longer, as a thank you for all the people that have faith in us to produce a great product at the end of it. Here's a question from Mike Volker. Any plans for Spline Tools, and are you going to implement a form of grouping? Spline Tools, no. Grouping, yes. If you notice down here, we've got these buttons. There's one which will create groups, one that edit groups, and one that delete groups. So I think you'll be pleased about that, but I'm going to show you that detail properly when it's in the Friday build, and then you can play around with it 2 days after I talk about it. But that's very close. It's the one that's very close. You can look forward to looking at that feature. Well, if you complete this year approximately, I will say well done and what an engine. Thank you very much. Yes. We are ambitious folk, but I think it's worth the wait. You really want to see the design. It really does tick a lot of boxes, and I think everyone will be very happy with what we're going to turn out in 2021. Here's some question from Lastandian Mapping. Can you specify system requirements of the engine question mark? Thanks for dividing your question into 3 lines, but that's fine. Minimum specifications as of today is the GTX 960 on a decent PC with some good speed. That's what we have now. It's not final. It's not finalised. Please don't make a pre-order purchase or any decisions on this product based on those minimum specifications. I would say wait until we're very close to a release before you commit. But that's the system specifications that we're working to today. Just scanning through the rest of the chat, but then also glancing across at the clock. I have exceeded my timetable once again, as is my custom. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to switch it over to the forums for the rest of the answers. And who gets that? Oh, that's Mohammed Al-Munna. Is it easy to make game like Counter-Strike Online PvP on GameGuru Max. No, it will be nearly impossible to create Counter-Strike Online PvP. GameGuru Max will be for single-player games. We're not going to support massive multiplayer or really large server-style games. I think there are probably a few game makers out there that let you do those massive multiplayer game situations. Maybe down the road we will look at, say, a 4-8 player PvP, but more like the deathmatch sort of situation rather than the huge amount of players joining and running around. For that, you kind of need to maintain a server, a game server, and all of the gubbins that goes with that. GameGuru Max, single player. If you're looking for multiplayer or massive multiplayer, it's best not to continue following GameGuru Max, perhaps until we've released, and then come back and say, right, now you've done all that stuff, now can we look at some multiplayer? And we're happy to talk about that. So that's this week's broadcast. The good news is, from next Wednesday onwards, you're going to see a lot more in the sort of software department. So if you have been biding your time, tuning in for the first 5 minutes and saying, it's another extended questions broadcast, I'm not tuning in, then certainly check us out in March and April, because I'll have a lot more to show you and a lot more juicy things, not just in the software, but potentially artwork as well. So yeah, as I said, I will be doing another broadcast next Wednesday at 4 p.m. And don't forget, as I now want to remind anyone that doesn't know, there is a 25% discount on the pre-orders, and what you get out of that is access to those Friday builds. So the things that I talk about on Wednesday, you get to play around with on Friday. But until next Wednesday, thanks for your attention. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will speak to you and enjoy speaking to you next Wednesday. So until then, goodbye.